Tonight we are assembling the Chapman Lake Knives CLK-2D. This is our second model, our drop point version of this knife. And just wanted to show you all what goes into the assembly. So I've already got everything laid out here that we'll need. I've pre-anodized all our screws and spacers. This is our electric blue color. Some would call it a blorple, but it has kind of a blue to purple anodize. We have our handles and our black DLC. Sometimes we anodize these, but these ones we chose to DLC. Typically, these would come out with the bare titanium that would look like this in our machine finish. This would be in our aluminum oxide finish, blast finish. And then we also do a ceramic bead blast finish, which is what was done to these DLC blades for a nice smooth polish finish. So first and foremost, we want to start with our blade. So I've already put our radial bearing, this is a press fit, into this bearing, into that pivot rather. And that's a nice tight fit. That's going to go around our center spacer. And what we're doing here is we want to match this blade to our center spacer. This is a very, very tight tolerance, and you want to be within less than 1/1000th, about a 1/2,000th of an inch to have that measured properly, so you're not going to get any side-to-side play, and you're going to have a nice crisp action without it being too tight or too loose. So we'll go ahead and measure this center spacer, and we'll measure our blade, and that'll tell us how much we need to take off of this center spacer so that it's tuned just perfectly. So it looks like this spacer is just under 282 thousandths. And our blade thickness is going to measure in at, we're just using a set of Michitoyo micrometers. My Japanese is a little rusty, so we're a little under 121 thousandths on the blade thickness. So based on that, I know what I need to go to. So we'll actually take, I've got a couple spacers that are already knocked down a little bit. And this is not going to show. So I just use this spare clip screw, screw that into my center spacer, just to give myself a little more to hold on to as we go over here to our sanding stone. And we've already pre-soaked this stone, so it's already good and soaked. Won't start burning this titanium. And this is a 400 grit stone here. Get a little more. Nice thing about doing this next to a sink. Get a little water for our diamond plate. Knock that down just a little bit. Polish that off like so. And we'll remeasure. All right, still a little high, so we'll go back. And just very light touch here on the 400 grit. We rotate it a little bit as we go, so we're getting that scratch pattern going in different directions. Keeping the end of that spacer as flat as possible. We want to keep it completely flat to the surface of the stone so that we're not getting any angle, any bevel that's going to alter our fit once it's assembled. So I'll polish it there on the diamond plate. Get another reading here on the micrometers. And that is perfect, within 10,000ths of an inch, which is what we're going for. So now we can start with the actual assembly. So what I usually do is I'll take one of our pivot screws in our electric blue, insert up through here, through the pivot hole. This is our back side, this is our button side. So, and then we've got our two thrust bearings. These are 440C stainless roller bearings. I like to add a little bit of lithium grease to these, just a couple dabs. Keep those rolling nice and smoothly. The reason we like using lithium grease is it stays put. A lot of your lubricants, your oils, they're going to tend to want to flow freely all throughout the interior of your knife. And while some prefer them, it can cause some issues if it gets into your threads. Might want to cause those to come loose. Now, of course, you can use Loctite to prevent that, but that has its own set of drawbacks if you're wanting to take your knife apart and clean it. Even the medium strength Loctite can sometimes get it pretty well locked shut, to where you're having to torque pretty hard on those screws to get yourself undone. So we like to avoid Loctite when we can. Of course, if you're a heavy user, if you're going to be flipping it a lot and you're finding that those pivot screws are coming undone, you may just want to go ahead and Loctite it anyways, because a pivot screw can come loose over time. So we've got our center spacer. We're going to put that on our pivot screw. We've got both our radial bearings. Now we're going to go ahead and place our button for the button lock with a spring, and you can see how that's just a chalice shaped button. The spring will fit down in like so. I'll add a little bit of lithium grease to this as well, just to keep things moving freely. Another nice thing about lithium grease in this step is it helps to kind of secure this, kind of holds that spring in place as I keep it in a vertical position during assembly. So get that placed like that. Now what I like to do is to take our middle and back spacers. So this one will go in our middle, and then this one will go here in the back. And we can just go ahead and screw both of those in loosely. And this will help make the assembly go a little more smoothly. Keep everything lined up. Now, a lot of people like to use gloves during assembly. You can see how I'm getting thumbprints, fingerprints all over this. We'll go back and clean that. It's hard to wear latex gloves and do these small threads, especially when it comes to the thumb stud that I'm going to put on this blade. So for that reason, I like to just clean everything at the end rather than worrying about fingerprints as I go. So now we're ready to place our blade. Again, you can see our radial bearing is going to fit over this center spacer, and then this is our closed lock detent. It's going to slide underneath the top of that button and should lay in there just like so. Now we can line up our two back spacers with our two screw holes on the back side of the blade. Sandwich everything together, and if it all fits together as it should go in nice and snugly. You should see that seam construction meet there in the back, and it looks like everything's good to go so far. Fingers crossed. So we'll put our top pivot screw in. Go ahead and screw that in gently. Don't have to tighten everything down just yet, because we're going to go ahead and want to put our backside screws in here. Now, another thing I like to do, I just use an empty plastic bag as I'm adding our clip and our clip screw. Now it's less important on DLC. This DLC is not going to scratch, but on our traditional ano, as you're putting the clip back on, I like to go ahead and put that piece of plastic in between so that it's not going to rub against that ano as we're finding our keyhole. So this is a reversible, you might be able to see there how we have this little keyhole that fits in to the machined area inside, and it'll keep this clip from wanting to spin and rotate, even though it is just a single screw holding that on there. And that is on both sides, so you can just take these screws, swap them, swap the clip to the other side if you prefer your clip on the opposite side for a right or a left-hand carry. So we'll go ahead and tighten that down. We'll get everything good and snug. So I'm going to go ahead and use a T10 on both sides. Don't have to go super hard, just nice light touch, but make sure that it's not going to freely rotate anywhere. And then last but not least, we have our two-piece thumb stud assembly. Now this is one that I do use Loctite on because there shouldn't ever be a need to take this off. Obviously, if you ever wanted to change colors, you could use pliers and get this off, but it will damage it in the process. So these are really designed to be permanent. So we're going to add just a very small drop of Loctite. And again, this is the blue medium strength Loctite. There we go. Yeah, this would be borderline impossible to do without, or with gloves on rather. And it's tricky to do barehanded. Very small little components. There we go. So get that nice and snug. Give it a good wipe, make sure none of that Loctite squeezed out onto the blade itself. Give that a nice, get this all cleaned up. And there we have an assembled CLK-2D. Thanks for watching.